Well, first of all, thanks to Sogeti for inviting me again to ramble to all of you for about half an hour, 40 minutes about China. As Menno will definitely know, it's one of my passions to share this information. So what I'm going to do within the theme of this seminar, this conference, is I'm going to talk to you about the happiness of, the digital happiness of the Chinese people. Now, some of you might think, well, hold on, the happiness of the Chinese people, they are all behind that Great Firewall, right? So they don't have Facebook, and they don't have Twitter, and they don't have YouTube. So how can they be happy when they don't have all of those wonderful things that we all have? Well, the answer is quite simple. For everything that we have in China, they have an alternative. So basically what happened is about 10 years ago, when all of these social media disappeared behind the Great Firewall, and the reason for that was that the Chinese government cannot control what content appears on those platforms. So unless, which some companies do, you have your servers in China with a joint venture so that the Chinese government can tell these joint ventures what should be removed from these platforms. If you don't do that, you disappear behind the Great Firewall if you become too popular. But what happened at the same time is that Chinese internet companies quickly started copying all of these platforms. So you quickly had a Chinese Facebook and a Chinese Twitter. And one of the most remarkable things, as you can see in the chart on the left, in the illustration on the left, is that there was not one copy of our platforms, but there was immediately several copies. For example, when Groupon started in the United States, there were 3,000 Groupon copies in China. And what normally happens is you get a very quick consolidation, and you normally have like only a couple of these companies that actually survive. And what we see happens then is they start to compete so heavily that to survive they need to innovate very quickly. And that's a situation that you don't really see in the West, because what you see here is that we normally, for all of the different functionalities in platforms, we basically just have one company. We have one Facebook. Okay, Google Plus tried to get into that market, didn't really succeed, but we basically only have one Twitter, we only have one YouTube. There are other video platforms, but there's one big market leader. Whereas in China, what you can see here is you always have multiple different companies. And this competition results in an innovation level that is much higher than we see here in the West. If you see the innovation that Facebook does, it's very slow compared to what's happening in China. Another thing is, whereas we normally have one platform that does one thing very well, in China you have platforms that do several functionalities, several things. They go out of their core business, so to speak, and they diversify into different functionalities. Now, these are all of the Western platforms, and these are all of the Chinese platforms. I'm not going to run through these, but let me assure you that basically what happens is that because of this innovation level in China, all of the platforms that you see here, as far as I'm concerned, are superior to what we have in the West. Now, I want to take one specific example, being WeChat, to show you what the impact of this is on consumer behavior and on the lives of the Chinese digital netizens. So we take WeChat, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through a day in the life of a fictional person. We'll call her Ting, and we'll just see what her day looks like when she uses WeChat. So when she wakes up in the morning, normally what the Chinese people do is they very quickly check first their Moments timeline. Now I'll show you what the user experience is of the Moments timeline. She goes into her WeChat app, and she goes into the Moments timeline, and it's basically a bit like Facebook. So you have all kinds of friends that send pictures, that send articles, that send photos. She'll basically, in the morning when she wakes up, will go through that as we go through our Facebook timeline. And she can open up those pictures and look at all of the things her friends have posted. So the second thing that they normally do is they check the chat messages that they have on their phones. So again, she goes into the app, and you see all of her friends, and she can go into a chat session with one of the friends and then see all of the pictures again and the messages. And something which is very specific to China, they use a lot of stickers, as you can see here, like these animated GIF files. And then you can respond to that in Chinese or in whatever language basically you want. So far, this doesn't seem to be very revolutionary. As a matter of fact, it's basically a bit of WhatsApp and a bit of Facebook. But what made a big difference when WeChat launched in 2011, and was launched by a company called Tencent, is that they included the possibility to have voice messages, to leave each other voice messages. And that was something that made a very big difference in China. So in this case, you see me having a conversation with somebody else just by voice message. It's also available in WhatsApp, but we don't really use it a lot. But in China, it makes a big difference. And the reason why it makes a big difference is because of the Chinese language. The Chinese language consists of 10,000 of different characters, and to be able to read a newspaper, you need to know about 3,000 to 5,000. Now, I don't know if you ever saw a keyboard with 3,000 to 5,000 characters on it, but it doesn't exist. So the Chinese need to enter their language in a different way. And they have three possibilities. The first thing they can do is they can draw the character on the telephone. And then here on the side, pick the character that is recognized by the software. So the second is that you can type in pinyin. That's like the Romanized phonetical pronunciation of the Chinese characters, and then choose the right character again here. So, 我们到了, and this is a way to actually communicate much faster than by typing. It saves a lot of time. The second thing, when Ting Ting has had her breakfast, she goes out of the house and she heads for the metro station. But the metro station is about 2 miles away, so what she does is she doesn't walk there, she gets a rental bike. Now, a rental bike, you see them here on the left, is basically a dockless bike. So you might have seen in certain big cities in Europe these bikes that are in a docking station that you can take out, and then when you want to leave it, you have to find a different docking station. But in this case, you can basically pick them up everywhere. The app, which you can open in WeChat, will tell you where those bikes are, and you can leave them just wherever you want, which is also a big problem I'll talk about a bit later. And this is how it works.
The increased use of smartphones has paved the way for bike sharing. Unlike traditional public bike service, this one is much easier to use. You just need to scan the QR code, and then you will hear the sound of the lock opening. And there you go.
So this is the first thing today we'll see, which uses QR code scanning. And like I said, when you lock the bike again and you leave it somewhere, you pay for the amount of time that you actually use that bike. And it's quite cheap at the moment because there's still a lot of these bike companies competing with each other. So you can almost ride through the metro station for free, as Ting Ting does. Now, when she comes to the metro station, she opens the metro station app in WeChat and brings up another QR code which she can scan to get into the metro system and therefore pay for her ride. She doesn't need to have any money anymore. She doesn't need to have like a public transport card anymore either. So after that, when she enters the metro, when she gets on the train, what you will see in China, even more so than here in Europe, is everybody is basically like this for about half an hour. Now, what are they doing? Most of them are checking their subscription accounts in WeChat. And subscription accounts are basically sort of like a Facebook company page, or like an email newsletter, or like personal blogs, where people, but also companies, can share information with each other. So you'll find it in your chat contacts, and if you go into that subfolder, you have the different accounts that you follow. Now, to give you an example, this is how the experience looks like. You go into that subscription account, and then you see all of the accounts that you follow, and you pick one, for instance, the one of ChinaTalk, and there's a Symposium last year of Sogeti. And if you go in there, you have more information about the actual event. It loads a bit slow because all of the pictures are on the server in China. But eventually you can scroll down and you can click on the link for read more and then go to a landing page, which also is inside WeChat. You have an integrated browser, so you don't even have to leave the app. And this is what a lot of young people do, and they consume a lot of information this way while they are commuting to their work. Now, once she arrives at work, she thinks, what I'll do just before I go into the office, I'll get a couple of snacks because I might get hungry during the day. Now this is something that appeared in China 2 or 3 years ago. And anybody seen this before? It's one of the ways that China is testing unmanned stores. So there's no cashier inside. It's a small shop. It's basically a bit of like a small convenience store, but there's nobody inside. So she can go inside and get some snacks and pay for it, and I'll show you how this works. Now to open the door, you just scan a QR code, and I'll show you how it works.
And the first time you scan this QR code, you actually register with the WeChat account of this bingo box. You need to type in your name and your telephone number, and then you get sent a code by an SMS message, by a text message. And you enter that code, and from there on you're registered to use these bingo boxes. The second thing you do is to go in, you scan the QR code. So you go into your WeChat account, discover menu, and you scan the QR code. Now once you scan the QR code, which I'll show you, so when you scan the QR code, you are allowed into the store. Now in the store, it's nice and cool in here. And what you'll find is several fridges. This one is selling all kinds of different ice cream. You have different types of snacks here. If you feel the urge, you can buy some condoms, or maybe even some sex toys, which is an interesting thing to find in this store. But as you walk around, as you can see, it's not very big, but you can even buy umbrellas. There's different types of snacks that you'll find here, and there's all kinds of drinks that you have here. So, just taking a Magnum from the fridge, and then I go to this machine, and this machine instructs me to first scan the item. So there's of course a barcode on it, and I hold it under the scanner, and then I put it on the side. And it invites me to pay by either Weixin, there's WeChat, or Alipay. So what I do, I choose WeChat because I normally use WeChat. So what I'll do now is I'll show you what happens when I scan the code. So it takes a while. So and then it says that the door will open, and there's a countdown to get out. So I go out of the store, I close the door, and this door will lock again. So if I want to get in, I would need to scan this QR code again to get some more information or some more products. So this is the bingo box, as you can find them in China.
First time I tried this, I actually got locked into the store because I wasn't fast enough to leave. So what you normally can do is you can call up a customer service employee that can remotely open the door for you, or you can, what I did, just simply buy another item and then just go out of the store because you get a second chance, which in itself is an interesting marketing strategy for retention. This is one of the examples of what they call new retail in China. And the way it works, you have different varieties in these kinds of things. The one we've seen is self-scanning and mobile payment. But there are also unmanned stores, like a Suning unmanned store that I visited, where you are recognized if you are registered in the app and you have registered your face, and you walk up to the store, there's a camera, and the doors will open and you can walk in. Then you can take certain items that have RFID tags on them, and then you go through a little aisle with sensors in it that detects the products you have taken from the shelf. And again, a camera identifies your face and the money is immediately taken from your account. So that's a different variety here. We probably also know Amazon Go. Amazon Go is a bit different. You identify yourself and you walk into the store, and then there's these cameras in the ceiling that identify anything that you take off the shelf and take with you, and you can just walk out of the store. Now, a big difference is that these two might be slightly less high-tech, but there are already hundreds of them in China. There is just one Amazon Go at the moment. I think that what the Chinese are doing is the way they have chosen the technology makes it possible for them to roll this out much faster. So, and when you go to Shanghai and Beijing, you will see these stores popping up, and also Alibaba and JD.com are experimenting with these. Now, these things are all part of something that is called new retail. And new retail is a term that Alibaba introduced a few years ago, I think in 2015, and it's basically about total integration of on and offline using artificial intelligence and big data. Now, there's several different aspects to that. The first one is connecting that on and offline. Now, one of the examples there is a store called Hema, which you might have read about in the news, which is actually integrated with an app. So you see a lot of employees running around there, and they are actually not filling the shelves, but they are taking stuff off the shelves because they're order picking. And they are fulfilling orders that people send in through their app, which are delivered within a 3-kilometer radius around the store. So that's one of the examples. Another example is optimization of logistical data. Alibaba is working with convenience stores, and basically they exchange the consumer data of anything that's purchased in that store from the store owners, and in return, one of the things that they get back, these store owners, is that Alibaba tells them what products to put on the shelves, because they have a lot of data that shows what people in that area are buying online. So they can tell these store owners which products are popular. Another example is the addition of retailtainment. So there's entertainment in retailing. And an example of this aspect is magic mirrors, where ladies can virtually try out, for instance, makeup, like lipstick, different colors of lipstick in a mirror. Or they can go into a store and just have themselves scanned, and then project different types of clothing on themselves to see how it would look on them before they actually try it out. And then finally, that's the unmanned stores that I just talked about. And this is the example I described of Suning, where you walk in based on facial recognition. Now, I could talk for much longer about this subject, but we have to go back to Tingting. So if you're interested in this, and I do advise you to have a look, because this is a very big trend that parts of this will also appear here in Europe eventually. You can go on YouTube where you can find a lecture I did specifically on new retail, which is, I think, quite interesting, if I say so myself. So back to Tingting. She's at the office, and she has to go to a customer. So what she does is she takes a taxi. And in WeChat, she opens up the WeChat wallet and she selects order taxi. She types in where she is and where she wants to go, and when she hits that orange button, basically what happens is you see a circle that's starting to spin, and it will show you the number of drivers that have seen your message. And then one of them will eventually respond to you. If they don't, you can give them a tip to see if that helps, if they respond quicker. If one of these drivers responds, then you'll see his name, you will see how far he is removed from you in both time and distance, and you can even talk to him on the phone. You can call him, or they will call you to maybe get some more information about where exactly you are. When you get into the cab, you click on that button, and when you get out of the cab, he will tell you, well, you owe me this much money. You type that into the same application within WeChat. You enter your PIN code, or nowadays you can simply use your finger code scanning, and then you have paid for your taxi ride. So you have ordered and paid for a taxi without ever leaving the app. Then during lunchtime, when lunchtime arrives, she decides that she will have lunch with people at her customer's office, and she goes into one of the official accounts of a food delivery company. She goes into, I want to order food, after which she will see the menu she can choose from, and then after making a choice, she will get a confirmation of a payment. She pays within the app as well, and she will get a confirmation of her order. She has also entered when she wants to have it delivered, and at exactly the right time, there's a knock on the door, and the Kwaidi, as they call them, the courier, arrives with the food, and together they have a lovely lunch at the office. So, about 3 o'clock, she has a little break, and she decides to do some shopping, what Chinese people do as soon as they get a break. So she goes back into the wallet of WeChat and she clicks on specials. That opens a sort of an app-in-app of JD.com. Now JD.com is for 20%, roughly 20% owned by Tencent. So this is one way that Tencent drives traffic to the website of one of their partners. What she can also do is she can scroll through some of the Wei Dian. And Weijian are small stores that individuals, but also companies and brands can open on WeChat and then sell stuff. It's very simple to set up. It's probably a bit like Shopify, but you can do that within WeChat as well. So it's all integrated. When she goes back to the metro station to go back home, she's a bit thirsty, so she sees this vending machine. And she walks up and she picks a drink. In this case, she picks a Coca-Cola. So when she does that, she has the option to pay with different mobile payment apps. So she can choose WeChat, or she can choose Alipay, which is Alibaba's alternative. And when she does that, the QR code will appear on the screen of the machine. When she then opens up the QR code scanner in WeChat, which is again integrated, and she scans that QR code, this screen will appear, and she can say, buy now, and the can will drop out of the machine. So again, something that she has never left this app at all. Coming home, almost home, she decides to do some quick groceries. So she goes into the store, and when she picks her stuff and goes to the cashier, she sees that she's invited to pay by WeChat. So again, she opens up the WeChat wallet, and there's an option for quick pay. If you click on that, and you might have seen this when I was in that store, it will bring up a barcode and a QR code. If you don't know how to do this, how to find this, when this was just introduced, you had these big stickers at the cash register. So that explain how you need to find this QR code or barcode. If you're in a supermarket, normally they already have a barcode scanner because they use that to scan all of your products. So the lady at the cash register, she simply takes your phone and she scans the barcode, and then you have paid for your groceries. Now, if you come to a more simple store that doesn't have a barcode scanner, what these shops normally have is they will have like a display with their own personal QR code on it, which you can scan to transfer money and to pay. And in even simpler situations where, for instance, there's like a very simple noodle shop where you get something to eat, the owner will just have his own personal QR code printed and pasted on the wall. And you can scan that to actually pay for your noodles. It's 7:30, and Ting Ting decides that she wants to have dinner with her friends. And what they normally do is they look on group buying within WeChat if there's any good deals in the area. So group buying is, again, it's a company behind that is Dianping, and Dianping is another partner of Tencent where they have invested in. So it's another way to drive traffic to their partners. When she comes back home after dinner, she doesn't feel quite well. So she thinks, well, maybe I should go and see a doctor because this isn't the first time. It's probably not just the food. So I don't know if you probably have never been to a Chinese hospital, right? Well, keep it that way. Because it's a pretty horrendous experience. It's normally very crowded, and you might have to go in the morning, and then by 2 o'clock it's finally your turn. So it's a pretty horrendous experience. But nowadays, in certain cities, you can go into WeChat and pick a time slot of the doctor, because you don't have general practitioners in China. You have to go to the hospital to get checked. So you pick a time slot, and you also pay for your consult. And then you can basically turn up at the right time instead of having to spend like the whole day in the hospital. So another thing that makes life a lot easier and a lot more pleasant for the Chinese people. But there's much more. This is only the tip of the iceberg, and I would be spending the whole morning if I would tell you everything that's possible. But just to give you a further overview, you can send money to your friends through WeChat. You can pay for your gas, your electricity, your water through WeChat. You can transfer your savings into a saving account and get a higher interest rate than you would get at the state-owned banks. You can have public services like request a passport or pay for your parking fines that you might have had. You can donate to charity. You can book flight, train tickets, even hotels through the app. And you can buy movie tickets and even pick the chair that you want to sit in at the theater. And what I'm personally quite proud of as a Dutchman is that you can even in WeChat go Dutch. So, which means that you can split the bill. This is like our cultural influence on the Chinese apps. So this is what Ting Ting actually did with her friends when she was having dinner earlier on. So on top of that, like I said, you have all of these integrations with the partners of Tencent. So all of these different companies that you see here for ride-hailing, e-commerce, travel, group buying, they are very prominently present in the app. And like I said, you don't have to leave WeChat to buy with these companies. And they're driving traffic at the same time. So to sum this up, if this would be like a Western telephone, where we are used to have apps that do one thing very well, but basically only that one thing, everything that you see here on the left, you can in China do in WeChat, and much more. Now that doesn't mean that the Chinese people only use one app. They use a lot of different apps, but maybe not so many as we do. And also there's a lot of other apps that have lots of functionality. But it does mean that they are much more used to have an all integrated situation within an app. Now, what this results in is that 35% of the time they spend on mobile phones is spent within WeChat. And QQ is another Tencent product, and if you add all of the other Tencent products, more than half of the time that people spend on mobile phones is spent within Tencent products. 50% of the WeChat users spend more than 90 minutes in the app every day. I think these are figures that Mark Zuckerberg would be very jealous of, most probably. And you can rest assured that almost everybody that has a smartphone in China will be using WeChat because all of this functionality is just very handy. Since 2011, WeChat now has more than 1 billion users. And most of these are within China because it's not really used outside China because you don't have all of that functionality outside China. Now, I've shown you that a lot of this is based on QR codes. And in the West, we didn't really like QR codes very much. We think they are ugly. We think they don't fit into an advertising. The marketing people don't really like them. And what we've been using them for in the past years is just as a shortcut to URL, just to go to a website where you can have more information. So it does not have a lot of added value. But people didn't like them. And this is a guy that created his own blog of pictures of people scanning QR codes, and he left it blank, just to be cynical. So that's how we like QR codes. But already in 2015, 50% of the people in China that were online had scanned QR codes. I think this might be close to 80% by now. And all of the other countries were basically lagging behind. They didn't really use them much. So it's all QR code based, what I've shown you. And not just in WeChat, but also in the alternative by Alibaba, Alipay, which is not a good social network, but all of the mobile payment options are also available there. So the Chinese people have two to choose from, and again, that's very good because these two companies compete very much, so they keep on innovating and keep on adding more and more functionality. Because of all of these QR codes that you use in these different apps, you can even see this happening on the street, where this would be a lady where I would buy a Dianping, in the morning, which is a breakfast pancake. And I normally would use this box and just throw a bit of money in to pay her. But now, as you can see, she also has her telephone there hooked up to a power bank, and you can just scan her QR code to pay. The same thing happens with this guy, which I saw on my last trip, and he's selling roasted sweet potatoes in the street. And as you can see here, he's got two QR codes. A blue one and a green one for Alipay and one for WeChat, because they basically cover 90% of the market. Now, because of this, the Chinese people don't have a lot of cash anymore on them. And they don't have a lot of coins anymore, which is a bit of a problem for part of society, because what do you do when you're a beggar in that case? Nobody has any change anymore to give you. So there's only one solution. You need to create your own QR code so people can give you a small gift in Alipay or in WeChat. So this is how far this has gone in Chinese society. You might think it's an interesting story, but I'm not doing any business with China, and what does it mean for me? Well, I'm going to let you come to the conclusion yourself by showing you a couple of examples here. So, WhatsApp added voice messaging in August 2013. Facebook Messenger did that half a year earlier, but in China it's already been present since 2011. Then we have web chat. This is also available in WhatsApp, so you can log in and chat online on your desktop. WhatsApp had that in 2015, but I've been using this in WeChat since 2012 already. Paying your friends is possible in Facebook Messenger since July 2015, but already in 2014 in WeChat. Getting a taxi is also possible nowadays in Facebook Messenger since December 2015, already 2 years earlier in WeChat. Ordering food. You've seen how we can order food through WeChat. It's possible in Facebook since 2017, May. In February 2014, this was already possible in China. Now, and more recently, Instagram has added some functionality where you can click on tags and buy the products that are shown. And that's just a couple of months now. And in China, this is way before 2013, what I remember, was already available there. So we are really basically lagging behind. And the internet companies and Facebook and WhatsApp, they are coming to the same conclusion. So what you see happening is, a couple of years ago, David Morcus of Facebook Messenger, he said, well, the Asian apps are basically showing us the way where we need to go. And we see news appear like WhatsApp launches business apps, which are basically the subscription and official accounts I've shown you. But it's going really, really slow. And at the same time, innovation keeps continuing in China, so the gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And the problem is that whereas a lot of companies would like to have the same kind of functionality, we are depending on companies like Facebook and WhatsApp to facilitate this for us, and they're not doing that. And that's problematic. But in China, it's all creating digital happiness, which in China is called Xingfu. Xingfu is happiness. And the digital happiness of the Chinese people is because of all of this convenience that it offers them. And all of the things that they didn't have before that they can now do through their smartphones. But at the same time, because we were also already talking about this last year, Menno and I, but there's been a bit of a difference. There's been a bit of a change going on in China recently. Does anybody know what this picture is? Bicycles? Yeah. It's bicycles. It's bicycles, and I've shown you the sharing bikes. Now, this is what happens at the edges of the big cities. And these are what they call bike graveyards. And there's so much competition. You can see all kinds of different colors. In this case, just 2, but there's like something like 6 or 7 different colors. And the government normally sorts them out. But what they do, the government puts these outside the city if they find these bikes in places where they're not supposed to be, or they're broken, or they're have any kind of other problems. And these bike sharing companies are supposed to pick these up and pay a fine for that. But what they actually do is they don't pick them up and they just put a new bike, a replacement bike in the city. Because that's much cheaper for them than paying for the fine they need to pay the government. So you have these bikes piling up in these bike graveyards. At the same time, what you have in the cities is this. Sometimes the pavements completely disappear. And there's no place to walk anymore. And you will find broken bikes piling up. Now, the government has said in certain cities it's no longer allowed to put new bikes on the street. But what some of these companies have been doing, they've just been taking new bikes, making scratches on them, putting a bit of mud on them, and putting them out in the street, and they look old so they don't get caught. So, but this is problematic, and you have both the bike companies but also the government constantly moving those bikes around, also taking them from places where people left them to the actual places where there's more demand. This creates a lot of what the Chinese call mafan. It's a hassle, this is annoying. And they are starting to criticize the internet companies for this. A different thing is, Menno and I last year were talking about privacy. Are Chinese consumers really careful and worried about their privacy? Only about the last year, half year, they've started to realize what all of these internet companies are doing with that data. And there's been a couple of scandals, and there's been a couple of data leaks and data breaches. So the Chinese consumer also gets more worried about this aspect. And then we have this, what happened in May and in August, which is really tragic, where the riders of Didi, well, I've shown you Didi, that taxi app before, but they also have a carpooling option in their app. And the thing is, when they launched that, and there's a lot of unmarried men in China. They have a surplus of something like 35 million men that will never find a partner. So when they launched this carpooling system, they said it's a great way to meet women. And they positioned this in such a way that it attracted some of the wrong people. And in May and in August this year, there have been cases where a female passenger got raped and killed. This is extremely tragic. And now, at this moment in China, there's a lot of buzz going on and a lot of criticism about what these companies could and should have done to protect their customers. So it's not all like one rose-colored picture that you see, but overall, at the end of the day, I do think that in China, digital and through smartphones creates a lot of xingfu, a lot of happiness, and I hope that some of this will eventually also turn up here. So even if you're not doing any business with China, just keep an eye on China because there's lots of interesting stuff happening there. And if you want to, just follow me through these channels and I'll keep you posted about that. Thank you.